Back to the Future. Could it actually happen with a real time machine?
I was devastated. I thought if I could build a time machine that I could go back and see him again and tell him what was going to happen, maybe save his life. And so that became an obsession for me.
Imagine vanishing from the world for years, only to return with a secret that could shatter everything we know about time. This isn't the plot of a movie. It really happened to Mike Markham, a young engineer who claimed to have invented a time machine and then disappeared without a trace. For years, experts dismissed his work as fantasy, yet fragments of his experiments were documented, analyzed, and, astonishingly, proved to be accurate. Then, one day, he returned, older, haunted, and carrying a warning so shocking that even the world's top scientists are questioning reality itself. What did he witness in the folds of time? And why does he insist the world isn't ready for it? But before we get into the full story, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single mind-blowing detail. The night a screw vanished. Years before he was known as the Time Machine Man, Mike Markham was just a nerdy kid from the middle of nowhere in Missouri who loved sparks for some reason. Mike went to scrapyards to get wire scraps, broken TVS, and metal pieces, while other kids rode bikes or played baseball after school. He didn't have a teacher or a real lab. All he had was a broken-down toolbox and a never-ending desire to know how electricity moved through metal. His neighbors called him the Electric Kid because they saw him hooking up car batteries to doorbells and using fence wire to try to light bulbs. By the time he was in his early 20s, his interest had turned into a much more focused goal. He wanted to bend electricity itself. He built a Jacob's ladder in a small space in a friend's shed. He thought it was his first real experiment. A wooden board held up two thin metal bars in the shape of a V. When it was turned on, blue arcs of high-voltage plasma crept up the rods in waves that cracked like lightning moving towards the roof. He fixed a cheap laser light between the rods to keep the arc steady. He learned this trick from an old science magazine. He got power from home transformers that he found in old appliances. It didn't look like Mike was a scientist. His office didn't have any shiny lab coats or white walls. Instead, it had hands stained with grease, coils that buzzed, and wires that ran across the floor. But in January 1995, that simple setup did something he was sure no other machine had ever done. Putting the ladder to the test, he dropped a steel screw into the space between the arcing rods. For a split second, the screw was nowhere to be seen. It then reappeared on the wooden board as if it had bounced through a hole that no one could see. Mike called the late-night radio show Coast to Coast AM to talk about what had happened. His voice was calm, but full of energy. He told the host, Art Bell, about the screw that disappeared, the arc that was held in place by a laser, and the strange ripple he thought he made. The radio stopped for a moment. This wasn't because people were ignoring him, but because they were listening. Later, some scientists wrote him letters telling him to stop before he did something that couldn't be fixed. Others wrote to tell him to keep going because they thought he had found a solution. The attention only pushed him further. Mike had been reckless when he swiped 6 industrial-grade transformers from a local power company's storage yard, all to give his project extra juice. When he connected them to his garage setup, the surge knocked out electricity to homes across rural Missouri. He got caught and served a 60-day jail sentence after the police traced the theft back to him. Prison didn't dampen his obsession. While others were counting down days to freedom, he sketched new ideas on scraps of paper and imagined the exact moment that Screw would vanish. He left more determined than ever to prove he hadn't been making things up. He promised himself, and the listeners of his radio show, that he would never touch stolen parts again. Instead, he scoured markets and yard sales for used transformers. He even bought a camera, vowing to record every experiment step by step as evidence. Even after he got out, letters kept arriving at the radio station. Some were fan mail, some were threats. One envelope contained $500 and a note that simply said, "Keep going." No return address. Everyone around him seemed to either push him forward or try to pull him back. Mike stayed caught in the middle, conflicted yet relentless. Every night, he returned to the garage, fine-tuning the rods by millimeters for smoother arcs. He examined screws and tiny bolts for signs of another flicker. What started as a backyard experiment had grown into a project that consumed all of their time. His friends noticed he barely left his workbench anymore. By the end of the following year, his passion would drive him to create a second, far more dangerous contraption, one capable of more than just removing screws. After that, Mike wouldn't be around anymore. The second experiment and the disappearance. When Mike returned to Coast AM in the final months of 1996, his voice wasn't the same confident, excited tone listeners remembered. It trembled, as if every word had to fight its way out. The cocky tinkerer who once boasted about vanishing screws now sounded uneasy, describing glitches that even worried his most loyal fans. He explained how the field inside his reconstructed frame seemed to pulse with a life of its own. Things passing through the gap didn't just vanish. They flickered in and out, uncertain whether to stay or go. Even the small animals he experimented on became lost or sick within hours of crossing the phantom boundary. Near the end of the call, he said something that lingered in listeners' minds long after the show ended. "I'm almost there. I only need more power and a better field." That moment kicked off weeks of anticipation. Art Bell planned a full update for March 1997, teasing the segment as the next chapter in a growing mystery. Fans couldn't wait to hear if the young inventor had gone further into the unknown. But on the night of the broadcast, the studio queue was silent. Calls to the makers went unanswered, leaving only dead mailboxes. Letters sent to his home sat unopened. Friends who once helped him move equipment hadn't seen him in weeks. The man who once shared every progress detail had vanished into darkness. Then came the fire. Neighbors smelled burning wires before flames even hit the small house at the edge of town. When firefighters arrived, the garage was charred black, walls dripping with melted copper, and a faint circular mark scorched deep into the concrete floor. The official report blamed an electrical overload. What shocked everyone most, however, was that Mike was gone. No trace of him remained. Among the wreckage were only a few bent tools and a single curled sheet of paper, still warm. On it, shaky black ink read, "It's not about time. It's about how you see things." That line became the heart of the mystery. Police listed him as missing, with no clue where he had gone or whether he was still alive. Tabloids dubbed him the Time Machine Man who vanished. And by summer 1997, the story had spread far beyond Missouri. Callers to the radio station debated whether he had destroyed himself or slipped through his own creation. Online message boards and late-night conspiracy newsletters wove tales mixing science and myth, cementing his legend in the public imagination. The official search slowed down, but the story grew by filling in the blanks that the investigation left. As time went on, what began as a garage experiment turned into a part of digital folklore, and the silence about Mike's fate became the most important part of the story. But no one had heard the last of him. The rumors, the unanswered questions, and that mysterious note would soon meet something even stranger than any idea. Soon after the fire, stories started to spread about a body that had been found on a California beach many years before. It was that of a guy who didn't belong there and was carrying something that no one could explain. The story of Mike Markham then went in a darker, more horrible direction when the internet met the man who vanished. When 1999 came around, Mike Markham's story had already left the radio and gone to live on some of the first message boards on the internet. Before social media feeds and viral videos, there were Usenet groups that were only text, obscure science boards, and chat rooms where people who liked to stay up late told each other scary stories. Late-night thinkers became very interested in the story of the young man who built a time machine in his garage and then disappeared in a fire. There were hundreds of replies to threads with names like "Where is the Time Machine Man?" and "The Screw That Bent Time," and each one was longer than the last. There were several ideas, but two stood out. The first one said he had succeeded and never came back, that the last surge of his machine had thrown him out of time and left behind only melted copper and a burned-out garage. The second idea claimed that he had come back, but not to the right year. This theory said that Mike's device had gone through more than space. It had gone wrong and dropped him decades from where he began. Both sides argued intensely, each sure their version made more sense than the official report of the missing person. Then, an old case came up again, which made the tale even stronger. It was in 1930 when the body of a man was found on a quiet beach in California. At the time, local newspapers said the victim seemed very out of place because he was wearing clothes that didn't fit the time period and was carrying something even stranger: a small, rectangular metal device with several keys that police couldn't figure out. The object was kept secret as evidence and was never captured by the public. The story was barely remembered for many years, just a note in police records. But as the Markham story went viral online, internet detectives picked up on that forgotten detail. The rumor took off when they matched the beachman's description to the few notes they had about Mike's appearance. Had Mike been thrown back to 1930 and died there, leaving his machine, or at least part of it, in his pocket? The idea led to a lot of new material. Amateur documentarians uploaded grainy videos that claimed to show how the two men were alike. Late-night radio shows talked about the case again. Some fringe websites put together dates that jumped from 1997 to 1930, as if they were stops on the same road. For followers, the missing picture of the device wasn't proof of nothing. It was proof that something was being hidden. In the early 2000s, a new twist. In the early 2000s, just as the chatter was fading, a surprising twist brought it back into the spotlight. In 2006, a college professor in Oregon, who ran a small blog about building Tesla coils, received an email from someone claiming to be Mike Markham. The email included hand-drawn diagrams labeled Vortex Stabilization Frame Gen 3. No explanation was given for why they were sent, and there was never any follow-up. The IP address traced back to a computer in a public library in Kauai, Hawaii. But by the time anyone tried to follow it again, the trail had gone cold. Nobody could say for sure whether Markham was really reaching out, or if it was all a hoax designed to stir up the story. The farmhouse discovery. Andrew and Melanie were a young couple who had just bought an old farmhouse on the quiet outskirts of rural Ohio in the fall of 2022. They felt like they were starting fresh. Their simple dream was to restore the worn-down house, polish the old wood, and turn it into a home. Before venturing into the attic, the house seemed ordinary. The room was thick with dust, stuffed with items long forgotten. Broken trunks, warped furniture, and taped-up boxes crowded the narrow beams. Melanie shifted a dilapidated chest aside, and her hand brushed something unusual, a heavy wooden box tucked under the eaves. The metal plate's inscription was worn, but the writing was still readable. M. Mark Markham. Do not open until the right time. They laughed at first, thinking it was a prank from a former owner, but curiosity quickly took over. Andrew forced the rusty lock open, and the metal snapped with a hollow crack. A cold, musty smell escaped as the lid creaked. Inside, they found 3 unsettling items: a stack of handwritten journals tightly wrapped in plastic, a bundle of rusty circuit boards taped together, many dates crossed out, and a single faded Polaroid photograph. The photo froze them in place. It showed a man in his 20s standing beside a metal frame shaped like a ring, constructed from pipes and wires. On the back, someone had written, June 21st, 2021. It did work, but not the way I thought it would. Andrew, a tech enthusiast, sensed they had uncovered more than a forgotten toolbox. That night, he searched online for M. Mark Markham and was drawn into a tangled web of old radio recordings, grainy conspiracy clips, and forum threads about the missing inventor, the mysterious fire, a body discovered on a beach in 1930, and a cryptic note about perspective. The discovery grew even more unsettling when they realized their farmhouse's exact address was noted in the journals as a spot where magnetic field behavior remains unusually stable. One page even listed a date matching the day Andrew and Melanie signed the purchase papers. They had no idea that these emails were just the beginning. 2 weeks later, the man they thought had been gone forever would walk through their front door, carrying only a folder with the truth about what really happened when he vanished. The return and the terrifying truth. The first sign that Mike was back was a call he didn't expect. When Andrew answered the phone, he thought it was a contractor, but he heard a low, raspy voice say his name was Mike Markham. He quietly said that he had mailed the box back in 2003, right before he disappeared. He talked about how he had spent years living off the grid and doing strange jobs. He wasn't trying to jump through time anymore. Instead, he was reassembling memory to live the same decade twice and see if I remembered it differently. After 2 weeks, Mike showed up at their farm with only a bag and a thin folder under his arm. The young, energized tinkerer from the Polaroid was now older, less quick, and clearly worn out. He spread out the folder on the kitchen table as if it were heavy with all the things he had lost. That night, Mike told the truth, which put an end to decades of rumors. He made a machine that could move him through time, but it never did. The Jacob's Ladder magnetic feedback loop he made in the 1990s messed up his own biological clock, throwing him off from the time frame everyone else was following. He said, "I didn't move. I could not be found." He talked about waking up in Oregon in 1999, burned and lost, with no memory of how he got there. His bank accounts were gone. His friends said they didn't know him, and even his family wasn't sure who he was. Mike said that anyone who was near the prototype felt slightly off. Seconds they couldn't explain, flashes of déjà vu, and a strange feeling of being one step ahead of themselves. Then they found out something that made them both quiet. Every test made his memory worse. It wasn't that time travel was possible that shocked him. It was that time forgets about you faster than the people who love you do. He pulled out a folder and showed them a page with 5 crossed-out names. Volunteers who had helped with early trials, but had forgotten all about him and the studies. He promised himself that he would never redo the whole thing again. Mike slipped away along the dirt road at dawn, carrying nothing but his backpack and a thumb drive. Andrew and Melanie bolted the attic, entrusted the plans to a private archive, and never mentioned the attic during their walks around the farmhouse. "Before you leave, Hit like, share, and subscribe to keep these mysteries alive. And tap the next video appearing on your screen. You won't believe the story that's waiting for you there.